A pair of cases involving police shootings is again focusing much attention on the way law enforcement responds to calls or threats in African American communities and whether justice is being served. William Brangham begins our report with the latest from Cleveland.
Based on the evidence they heard and the law as it applies to police use of deadly force, the grand jury declined to bring criminal charges.
The announcement today came from Cuyahoga County Prosecutor Timothy McGinty that the officers involved in the shooting death of Tamir Rice won't be charged with any crime. Back in 2014, police officers crossed paths with Rice, a black 12-year-old boy, while responding to 911 calls of a man with a gun in a public park, reports that later proved to be inaccurate. McGinty said that as officers arrived at the scene, Rice reached for something that looked like a gun. One officer jumped out of the car and shot the boy. It turned out Rice had a toy gun. His death sparked local and national protests. But today, Prosecutor McGinty said he agreed with the decision not to indict the police.
Given this perfect storm of human error, mistakes, and miscommunications by all involved that day, the evidence did not indicate criminal conduct by police.
The Cleveland decision follows yet another weekend of tension over police shootings in another Midwestern city, Chicago. Yesterday, friends and family of two black Chicago residents killed early Saturday morning gathered to voice their grief in song.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
They huddled outside the Chicago home where the shootings occurred. Chicago police say they were responding to a domestic disturbance report called in by the father of one of those killed, 19-year-old Quintonio LeGrier. Police said the officers fired at LeGrier after they were, quote, confronted by a combative subject. LeGrier, who was holding a baseball bat at the time and reportedly had emotional problems, died. But so did 55-year-old Betty Jones, who lived on the home's ground floor and who had just finished hosting family for the holiday. Police said Jones, who was known in her neighborhood for working to curb violence, was, quote, accidentally struck. For Jones's family and friends, the big question was how a woman who was essentially a bystander ended up being killed.
Why you got to shoot first and ask questions later? It's ridiculous. Somebody needs to do something about this.
The night of Christmas, everybody was playing spades, drinking, having fun, celebrating Christmas.
Yes.
Like many Chicago families across the country. She should not have to come outside, open the door, and be shot down by a police officer.
And for LeGrier's mother, the question was why lethal force was used against her son.
What happened to tasers? 7 times my son was shot. Something just needs to be done. I used to watch the news daily, and I would grieve for other mothers, other family members. And now today, I'm grieving myself.
Chicago police haven't identified the officers involved, but as part of a new departmental policy, they'll be put on desk duty for 30 days. This weekend's killings are yet another black eye for a department that's already at the center of a citywide uproar and whose practices are currently under federal investigation. Protests have occurred regularly since last month when the city released video of the 2014 police shooting death of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. Since then, the officer in that case, Jason Van Dyke, was charged with first-degree murder. The city's police commissioner, Gary McCarthy, resigned, and pressure is mounted on Mayor Rahm Emanuel to resign as well. Back in Cleveland, that city's mayor, Frank Jackson, called for calm as news spread about the decision in the Tamir Rice case. Rice's family called for calm as well in a statement. They also said they were, quote, saddened and disappointed by this outcome, but not surprised. And they accused Prosecutor McGinty of, quote, abusing and manipulating the grand jury process to orchestrate a vote against indictment. Let's get a pair of reports now from both cities about the latest, starting with the Tamir Rice in Cleveland. I spoke a short time ago by Skype with Chris Warnowski, who's been following the case and the community reaction. He's with Cleveland.com, part of the Northeast Ohio Media Group and the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Chris, thanks very much for joining us. Can you just tell me what has been the initial reaction to this decision not to indict the officers?
I think you're seeing a lot of outrage on social media right now. I think Twitter and Facebook have blown up. I think from a national perspective, right now things in the city here are actually pretty quiet. There's a march going on right now from the Cudell Recreational Center where Tamir was shot down to the Justice Center, which houses our courthouse and jail.
I mean, Prosecutor McGinty said in his comments today that the evidence, the video evidence, proved indisputably in his mind that a crime had not been committed. Obviously, the family doesn't seem to see it the same way.
Yeah, you're right. I think that I think that the family is still grief-stricken and still upset, and frankly, I don't think there's much that anybody could say that would convince the family that this was the right decision to make.
I mean, on that video, I know there was some question about how long the officers actually had to warn Tamir to put the gun down before they opened fire. Has that been part of the discussion you've been hearing in Cleveland?
I think there's a lot of dispute over the warning that the police department said that Officer Lohman had given to Tamir. You know, I think people have sort of done their own counting to see if it's possible to give so many warnings as they were speeding up to the scene there where the young boy was shot. So, you know, I hesitate to speculate because it's difficult to say exactly what happened because there's no audio on the video. I think that's a missing component that I think would have helped clarify a lot of the things that are still lingering as questions.
Prosecutor McGinty has also been criticized throughout the process of this grand jury for putting out dribs and drabs of the evidence that seemed to bolster the case not to indict the officers. Do you think that today's decision is going to quell any of those criticisms?
No, I think he's going to carry this criticism with him. I mean, he's got an election coming up, and I think, you know, I think he's gonna feel this for a long time, and you know, I think the decision for him to put out the information in bits and pieces, I think was a response to how the Ferguson grand jury was handled, and I believe that. I mean, it's unusual. You know, it's not something that you see every day in the criminal justice system. And I think part of the reason is the sort of response you're seeing today. You know, we're not seeing a lot of uproar right now, and I think that it sort of helped ease people into what you know a lot of people already knew the decision was going to be.
All right, Chris Ranowski, thank you very much for joining us.